Welcome on into the Wolverine podcast here, Monday, March 24th. Anthony Broom here with Chris Ballas and Clayton Safey in a packed episode. Not live this week. We're coming to you on a recorded edition, but we have a lot to get to. I don't know if you guys have heard, Michigan basketball is still very much alive. Reports of their demise greatly exaggerated. They are in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament, heading to Atlanta on Thursday to take on top overall seed Auburn. Fired up for that. All three of us will be down there. We'll discuss that and the first weekend of the tournament. Sharon Moore spoke to the media today as they move into what I believe is day 4 of spring practices tomorrow in Ann Arbor. So things are rolling along there. They're about a week into all that. So there is a lot to get to this week. But fellas, it's the first time the three of us have been together in the state of Michigan in the last week or so. So welcome back.
Yeah, it's been great. Wow. Denver was fantastic. Anthony, you're going to be down there in Atlanta with us. I'm sorry you missed it. Next time, there's no excuse, man. You got to get out there. It was so much fun. We did some things with our subscribers at the Thirsty Lion. Thanks to the folks at the Thirsty Lion for taking care of us thirsty Wolverines. That was fun as hell, even getting a beer spilled on us by Wolverine Luke. So thanks, Luke, for that. They replaced it so Luke didn't have to. But unbelievable. Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to a guy, Kirk Strelo, on the way home. Man, sometimes on these flights you get to sit next to Michigan fans who get to see the podcast. He's a listener from Kalamazoo, and he was actually from the same town as my college roommate, and talking sports with him for 2.5 hours on a flight in Michigan football was fantastic. So it was great meeting you. But overall, man, is this time of year, does it get any better than this? And when you've got a guy like Dusty May who has done what he's done in 1 year, and you had 8 wins last year, fellas, and now you're a game away from the Elite Eight, I don't think people really appreciate how unbelievable that is. And I do want to issue a personal apology to the people on the board when I said that I didn't think this team had a run in them. I thought they were figured out. They were tired. They were everything else. So I have started the handwritten apologies to like the handful of people who are really, really pissed off about that prediction. And I do want to say that when you are in this business, or if you're anybody else, as somebody once said to Doug Karsh on the air, Michigan's voice of Michigan football, when he was doing his radio show, they said, "Oh, you were wrong again," or something like that. And Doug said, "Well, get used to it, because when you put out a lot of opinions, you're going to be wrong sometime." I could not be happier to be wrong, and your handwritten apologies are on the way. You guys know who you are. I'm really, really sorry from the bottom of my heart.
There is nothing better than winning a tournament game. There's nothing better than the other team shoots at the end, you get the rebound, you get fouled, the crowd starts to feel what's coming, the players on the bench start to feel it, the guys that walk down the floor to the free throw line. That feeling is something, if you could bottle it, and sell it, you'd make a lot of money, because there's just nothing better than everything being on the line. Your season could be over, and sometimes you kind of lose sight of that. Even talking to Danny Wolf in the off day before the Texas A&M game, he said, yeah, hopefully we can cement ourselves here over the next few weeks. And I'm thinking, if they don't come out with a win tomorrow, it's just over like that. And it just didn't feel like this season could end, this run could end with this special group in year one under Dusty May, this incredible coaching staff. So what a weekend in Denver. We had some good weather out there. It was, a pretty electric atmosphere in both games, especially the first one. And part of it was because the whole building started rooting for the underdog UCSD and turned against Michigan. But then, about 40% of the crowd was Michigan, and, they're countering, and just great atmospheres. But a heck of a time. I got in this morning at 3:20 a.m. is when I walked in the door. And I had one thought on my mind: we sleep in May. So let's go. Ready to get back at it, get down to hot Atlanta. As Matt Shepard said in 2013, and it's true now, hot Atlanta gets a hot Michigan club.
We're sitting watching games this weekend, and I'm at home. So it's almost, there's covering the NCAA tournament, and there's being at home watching, where your house, your living room kind of becomes like the command center, where you get all these screens on, and you're switching game to game. And we were watching one of the games. I forget which one, but my wife had asked me, why do they show the shots on TV of the losing fans crying or being upset? And I'm like, that's why we do this. It's all about the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. There's nothing better than being on the right side of it. But when you're on the wrong side of it, you appreciate moments like this a lot more. And last year, we've said it a billion times at this point, last year was what it was, and to be here now, it feels like it was 4 years ago. It feels like a distant memory. Winning tends to erase that pretty quickly. So we will talk about the game. We'll talk about the first 2 games that they played. We'll talk about what's ahead in Atlanta before we all head to Atlanta later this week. But first, we have to shout out our sponsors for the Monday podcast, our friends over at homefieldapparel.com. Use that promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order. Listen, you're buzzing. You're riding high on your team right now. And usually, at least when that happens with me, I go to a place like Homefield and I pull the credit card out and I'm getting new gear. I'm getting sweatshirts. I'm getting t-shirts. I'm getting hats, hoodies, joggers, whatever it is, whatever I can get my hands on. Because when your team wins and then you have some time off between games, all you want to do is wear your team's gear in between that. And Homefield, their Michigan collection is phenomenal. You can see it up here on the screen now. You've got the new hockey hoodie. You've got the hats in there, long sleeve t-shirts. We're looking at it on the screen now. The Hoops Society box, which has a couple a box exclusive t-shirt, box exclusive items in that. So check that out over on homefieldapparel.com. Use that promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order. Again, we're also brought to you by ourselves as well with the promo code UM1. That gets you 2 months of access to our site for a single $1 a lot. Chris put up a 2-part Inside the Fort the last couple days. Latest edition came on Monday morning, and that covers hoops, inside spring football. Our recruiting guys are staying plenty busy with what's going on that side of it. So use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our site for only a single $1. I'll start here. This is something I said. I did a couple of post-game shows after those first 2 games this past weekend. We'll do something. I don't know what that's going to look like with all of us being there, but would love to do something like that after the game or games in Atlanta, however long this goes. But something I said Saturday that I think still rings true here is that, listen, the NCAA tournament, it's one and done. You could have a bad night and you're done, and you're one of these teams that gets upset early. And mind you, there are not a lot of upsets early in this tournament. Some good games that came down to the wire, but I think this is the first Sweet 16 ever that has all power conference teams. And there's a few reasons for that, but Michigan was a missed shot or 2 away from losing to UC San Diego. They were down 10 in the second half to Texas A&M. It felt like when you look at this weekend at large, Thursday night's win, the season was affirmed. This first year under Dusty May was affirmed and gets high marks for what happened in the Big Ten tournament. But I came into this event feeling like, all right, you won the big tournament. It would be kind of disappointing if you didn't at least get that first game now. So you beat UC San Diego. That feels like, you know what? Whatever happens from here, gravy. You love to see it. You come out in this game against Texas A&M where I feel like for 3/4 of that game, it just felt like they didn't have it offensively, or that maybe the sands of time were running low on what this season was, and they find a way to do what they've done all season. They come back, they fight. The game obviously was 91-79. It was much closer than the final score indicates because you're shooting free throws to seal it late. But, if that win Thursday night kind of put a stamp on this season, I think this win Saturday puts a stamp on who you have as your head coach and what this program is and can be moving forward.
What is his overall record in the NCAA tournament now, Clay?
It's got to be 7-1 or 6-1, right?
Maybe 6-2 now.
Or 2, yeah, you got it.
Right. So we're talking about a guy here who took a team that looked dead in the water and flipped a switch. And when they had a little bit of rest and got their legs back and they got a little bit of confidence back on that Friday against Purdue, they've beaten some unbelievably good teams. The funny argument now, you get these Michigan fans saying, well, they should have blown UCSD out by 20 or 30. And as Dusty May said in his press conference, and I'm going to listen to him over, with all due respect, Big Blue Stud 522, who signed up yesterday to bitch about Michigan basketball, that was not a 12 seed, guys. That was a good basketball team. No, they didn't look the part. And when we saw them, even writers in San Diego said, yeah, physically, Michigan should take care of this team. At the same time, when they spread them out, they had guys that were making shots like crazy, and to keep them in it, and some really nice drives and finishes. That was a very good win. I don't give a damn what anybody says. That was a fantastic win. And then to come back with a team with a completely different style in Texas A&M, and you have the one-day prep, you could tell that they were prepared. And Clay and I were behind the bench, and we were listening to them calling out counters for everything that Texas A&M had. So you could tell that they had been scouting them for a while. They were basically telling guys where to go defensively, offensively. And you always get the sense that if it is a close game down the stretch, Michigan's going to find a way because they've done it all year. It is not luck. This is a group of guys that saves their best for last. You see a little bit extra in the effort department and the concentration department. 9 turnovers against that team, guys, is fantastic. And the work that they did on the glass as well. We're showing right now for the people listening that can't see Trey Donaldson's shot with his tongue out. He's got the Michael Jordan tongue out. That was one of the shots of the year, and it wasn't the difference, but it certainly played a big part. These are the things that continue to happen, and you can call them lucky if you want to, but when it comes down to it, when you win games like that down the stretch, that is mental toughness. And when you get those outliers, like we always talk about and John Beeline talks about, I predicted it would be Reuben Jones getting the shots. Guess what? It was Roddy Gale instead. Roddy freaking Gale, 26 points. 8 for 8 from the line, 4 for 6 from 3-point range. Could not be happier for him. What a win, guys. And going to the Sweet 16, I've said this many times, covering postseason basketball for me is like covering Michigan football. It is right up there. I know there are a lot of Michigan football fans only, but when you get to cover a team like this that's, is well coached, has a great chance in every game, there's something special about it.
Yeah, and going back to the point about Danny Wolf talking about how they could cement themselves, they did that with this game because it turns into a really good year one. I mean, a great year one coming off of what last year was. You win the Big Ten tournament. You already have a banner that you're going to hang next season in your back pocket. But into a special season, you make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. You get to come home, and that Dusty May said hopefully that they can just continue to focus on what's important here in the next few days before they head out on Wednesday to Atlanta. But you get to come home with your head held high, feel good about yourself. That's another perk of making the Sweet 16 is the fan base has pretty much another week to kind of just be on this run. I mean, as John Beeline used to say, food tastes better when you're on a run. There's just something magical about it. So this
sub sandwiches at midnight, Clay.
Yeah, it could get crazy. So like it's now in the category of a 2017 team, where they, with minus the plane crash, but you win the Big Ten tournament, you make the Sweet 16, you're a shot away from making the Elite Eight or a box out away from making the Elite Eight against Oregon in that year. And they're still going this season. They have a chance to make it even further and be more in the category of a 2014 if you make the Elite Eight, right? That team won the Big Ten outright in the regular season, not the tournament title. They made it to the championship game, then get to the Elite Eight, and it was another one shot away from the Final Four. But the fact that they're still dancing is amazing, and the 2 wins, the different ways that they had to do it against a UC San Diego team that was really, really good, especially defensively, but the way Michigan checked on the other end, and then the way they defended and rebounded against Texas A&M, all the talk in the 48 hours beforehand had to do with Texas A&M being the number 1 offensive rebounding team in the country. Michigan players said afterwards they took that personally, that people thought that, looking back to games against Michigan State and Illinois and other teams that rebounded it well offensively against them, they stepped up and didn't just I wrote before the game, it's going to have to be kind of like holding your own on that front and then doing other things well. They didn't just do that. They won the rebounding battle by 9. They had more offensive rebounds than Texas A&M did. Michigan was the team more aggressive, getting downhill, getting to the free throw line. 23 made free throws in the second half, 50-some points in the second half. So just a really, really good weekend of basketball. You did it with those outliers that you talked about, Chris, with Roddy Gale Jr. stepping up and beyond just stepping up, right? It wasn't, you thought coming in like, okay, if he could make a 3 or 2 or get to the line or get to the rim a couple times like he has throughout the season, even when he's been struggling, you've seen flashes here and there. But no, he put it all together for a 26-point performance. LJ Kaysen now is looking like one of the more dynamic players on the floor when he's out there. Then you get the clutch moments from Trey Donaldson. The 3, 13 seconds after UC San Diego took their first lead of the game on Thursday night. And then that lefty, I don't want to call it a prayer, but just a crazy shot, that lefty flip shot against A&M late. the run he's on of clutch plays, when you think about the 3 late against Wisconsin, the 3 against Maryland late, and then the game-winning layup, and then what he did this past weekend in those 2 games is pretty remarkable. So they're getting exactly, enough from enough places. And the guy who didn't play well over the weekend or play much, Namari Burnett, maybe he's due this weekend to be one of those guys to break out.
Yeah, on Roddy Gale, I mean, that's I can't even say that's the guy that a lot of people thought they were getting. That's like the best version of the guy that they thought they were getting, where, he's aggressive. He's getting to the free throw line, knocking down free throws, hitting his share of the 3-pointers. Again, if you're going to make a run in this tournament, you got to have big games from some of these guys that just, you flip over the box scores and they haven't really been there all year. So that they were able to get that it's remarkable. And it's the sign of a team that has options. Now we know they're not as deep as we thought they would be, because obviously Sam Walter's still dealing with a back injury at this point. That's not even in the calculus for me. We're talking about, what's on this team the rest of the way. Obviously Justin Pippen won't be on this team the rest of the way. He missed the last 2 weekends in concussion protocol and now is apparently in the transfer portal. So
Can we talk about that for a minute?
I had it earmarked to talk a little bit, but let's hit it now.
Sure. Well, why at this point, right? And I don't know how long's the portal open, fellas? This portal is it weeks? A month. Okay. So who's mentoring him to bail at this point and announce it at this point when you have a chance to be part of something pretty special here that you have contributed to? I don't understand that. And maybe it was his decision alone. Doesn't make any sense to me, though. When you are with this group of guys that you've gone to war with all year, and now you are getting the best part of it, right? Why announce now? If those teams are still going to be there, you can put out the feelers right behind the scenes. But to me, it's an unnecessary distraction. It really bugs me. It rubs me the wrong way. I'm not blaming the kid necessarily, but to me, this one doesn't make any sense. At least the timing. Maybe going forward, you see LJ Kaysen, Justin Pippen has shown flashes of being okay at times. The game was moving too fast for him. There wasn't a single game where you could say he had an impact like LJ Kaysen. And of course, we wish the kid well. But to me, this one just doesn't make any sense at this point.
What makes less sense is that the portal opened today.
Right. That's exactly right.
During the season,
come on. Give me a break.
The calendar screwed up in football because you have the portal opening in December. So they start the offseason during the season. And then you have, there's still 16 teams out there, plus whatever's in the NIT, whatever's in the Crown. I know we joked a couple of years ago about, following the NIT, but I don't even know who's playing in that right now. But there are, still dozens of teams playing in college basketball during the season, and they open the portal. And the semester is not even close to being over. So there's plenty of time for them to do that. So in one respect, it kind of puts these kids in a tough spot. But I agree. I mean, there's a chance he would get minutes. Someone's in foul trouble, he'd get a couple minutes or a first half shift or
to
something
play
like
in
that
the Sweet 16
in the tournament.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
ridiculous. Yep. So I don't get it, and I agree with your argument completely too, Clay. The NCAA once again, in its infinite wisdom, opening the portal when teams are still playing, and now Dusty May, who doesn't sleep anyway, is busting his ass, AB, and sleeping even less to get a head start on the portal, which he's doing. And I know that you're putting something together for the front page, but all in all, doesn't make any sense to me, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, this is where, like, I get why there are complications with the football portal just because of where the season ends and how it lands between semesters. But what are we doing right now? Like, you're literally in the middle of a semester, and there's not much time left in it, really. So I don't get why you wouldn't just ride it out. From his perspective, it's clear that there is a pecking order now when it comes to the young, we'll just say the freshman guards. LJ Kaysen is maybe, is at the top of that list. And Pippen was a guy who was a late riser. He was a top 100 recruit by the time that cycle was over. And he got quite a bit of run this year and gave them some solid minutes. But it's strange. I don't know if I don't know that we know enough about his situation yet to like comment on it fully. But the fact that, it is weird that the optics of a guy not traveling the last 2 weekends because of being in concussion protocol, and then the first day the portal opens, he's in. That feels a little weird to me. So on the flip side of that, though, a lot of guys that Michigan's reached out to and made contact with, and maybe that's something we touch on later on this week. But I guess it kind of goes back to the point, like your team is on the floor right now. This is an 8-man rotation. This is a group of guys that, it was great to see Fat and some of the walk-ons get in Saturday's game. Just to step on the floor in an NCAA tournament game is a remarkable achievement for a lot of these guys. So
BS call
they
on
had to have that
Kurtz and
moment.
Hochberg. It was a terrible call on Hochberg.
Awful.
I was still, when those guys came in, I was working on booking my flight. So I'm like, hey, this game's over. Let's let those guys have their minute.
But you know what Clay said? You know what Clay said, AB? He said he got himself in the box score, right, in an NCAA tournament game. So you might as well do it somehow, And hey,
trivia.
And if I hadn't been him, I would have gotten the technical foul too, bitching about the call, maybe gotten thrown out. So why not go out in a blaze of glory, right?
He was laughing about it after too, and he said, he agreed. He's like, well, maybe it'll be my only stat of the tournament, and he'll be fine with that. He's like, as long as we're going to Atlanta, and they are.
Yep.
So.
Speaking of going to Atlanta, we're going to talk about what could be ahead this weekend. This is not a hot take. Michigan currently is the hottest non-1 seed in this tournament right now. You go to active win streaks on KenPom. Houston's won 15 in a row. Duke has won 13 in a row. Florida's won 8 in a row. Michigan, the 4th longest winning streak of the teams left in this field, with I believe it is 5 wins in a row now, with the 2 in the NCAAs and the 3 in Indianapolis. So I know, Clay, you're working on something now with, rounding up how after that first weekend, everyone likes to re-rank the teams, reseed the teams, etc. One of the hottest teams in college basketball right now. And you're going up against a team on Friday in Auburn who, entered this field as the number 1 overall seed. And we'll do, our more at-length preview later on. But scuffled a bit late. Wasn't crazy about their effort in the first half against Alabama State. I actually watched both of their first games in their entirety. And then Creighton gave them a game, and then they pulled away late. I think this will be a war. And the storyline coming into this week is going to be how deep and experienced Auburn is. And maybe the depth might be something where, one of those data points where you give them a leg up in this matchup. But Michigan's got a lot of guys who have played a lot of college basketball too, including its starting point guard who was on this Auburn team last year. So a little bit of extra juice there. Your guys' initial thoughts on the matchup. And, I feel like filling out these brackets a week ago, this felt like a possibility, and now we're here.
Yeah, I like the matchup. I really do. I like the coaching matchup, to be honest with you. I think Bruce Pearl is kind of a fraud. Better basketball minds than me have said that. And yeah, he gets lots of talent. But to me, Dusty May, as Buzz Williams said, is a genius when it comes to matchups and when it comes to scouting and analytics and everything else. He's proving to be an unbelievably good postseason coach. Now, we don't have a ton of evidence of that. We have enough, in my opinion, to say, hey, this guy knows what he's doing when it comes down to this. And when it comes to when we talk about matchups, right, and you look at Auburn and, of course, all the talent they have, and it's going to be tough. There's no question about it. This is not Texas A&M. This is a team that can score it. This is the team that was number 1 in the country for a long period of time. And they had 2 losses until losing 3 of the last 5 or something like that. But they're still extremely talented, probably one of the most talented, probably maybe the most talented team left in the tournament. But I like the way Michigan's playing, and I like this matchup. I like Michigan when it comes to physicality and the way they've been playing. We've seen they've turned a corner in that respect. If you look at the Maryland game, and if you look at the Texas A&M game, even the end of that UCSD game, guys, they kind of imposed their will at the end of that game. So I think this is going to come right down to the wire. And when it comes down to the wire, I like Michigan's chances. What are they right now? A 6-point underdog, 6.5, Clay? Something like that.
I saw 7.5 yesterday.
7.5 is way high. I think Michigan's going to give them a battle, and they're rested now. They aren't going out to Atlanta on 2-3 days rest, and you aren't seeing guys like Damari Burnett was struggling, fellas, in shoot-arounds on Wednesday. He was having trouble just getting the ball to the rim. So that's not going to be the case. And we saw the last time when they had rest what they did against Purdue. They looked like a completely different team. So I like it. I think they've got a shot here, just like I think Ole Miss has a shot against Michigan State. We're already looking ahead, a potential Michigan State Elite Eight, but there are several things that can still happen here. Could be two SEC teams for all we know. But if Michigan were to get to the Elite Eight, and I think there's a distinct possibility, we could talk about Michigan State in our next podcast. But to me, I like Michigan to give Auburn one hell of a game.
Yeah, this is, when you played UC San Diego, you're looking at a unique style of play. Some of the things they do well, some of the things you can exploit. Texas A&M, some of the things they do well, offensive rebounding is pretty much bullet point number one there. And then some things you can exploit. With Auburn, it's more like, okay, you're playing a complete team. You're playing the number one overall seed, so you're going to have to be really good in pretty much every area here. And like you said, Chris, I mean, they're not just a really good offensive rebounding team or a great offensive rebounding team, not quite to the extent that Texas A&M was, but they also shoot it really well. You're not going to get some of those misses against A&M. And they're a great defensive team. They rank third overall on KenPom in offense, 13th or 12th in defense. And, so it's going to be tough on each end, but they haven't been really playing well for about a month either, or playing their best. I mean, it's still, all relative because this is a really good team. Trey Donaldson going against his former team. They got a freshman point guard in Pettiford that will be matched up with him. And then the big man matchup is really exciting with Vladislav Golden out of whatever Russia that the PR staff there, the NCAA made a mistake on his hometown before the game the other day. But him and the way he's been playing, and Danny Wolf against Janai Broom, who's probably going to finish runner-up for all the National Player of the Year awards to Cooper Flagg from Duke, Anthony's nephew there, Neff, he calls him, and then Dylan Cardwell as well down low, plays about half the game at 6'11", 255 pounds. I'm excited to see all of that, how Trey Donaldson comes out against his former team. It's interesting when Roddy Gale played Ohio State earlier in the year. It was kind of a revenge game on the fans. Like, he loved the program and talked all about that leading into it. Loved the teammates, Diebler and the coaching staff. But with Trey Donaldson, although he would have been welcome back if he would have come back this past season instead of transferring to Michigan, this feels like a little bit more of a revenge game on the actual program, just because he maybe didn't play as well or as much as he would have wanted to, things of that nature. So we'll see how he handles that. Who else can step up in this matchup? It's probably going to be a crowd that's against you. Especially considering that, Auburn is right there, and you may get some Michigan State fans. If they win in the game earlier, I guess they might want to face Michigan, but they hate Michigan so much that they'll probably be rooting against them anyway, and the building can turn on you, but Michigan should have a decent amount of fans there too.
The building emptied, by the way, at the Big Ten tournament after they lost to Wisconsin. And that was kind of fun watching them flock to the exits. And there was a backup on I-69 there for a while, as we heard on the traffic report. They couldn't get out of town fast enough. So that would be ideal if Ole Miss were to lose, because I don't think they would be. I think they'd definitely be rooting against Auburn, right? Their fans in the second game, the Ole Miss fans, if they were to win that game. So we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. But AB, I think we all want to know, is Broom really your nephew?
No.
I'm not allowed to comment on that.
Okay.
Out of NCAA protocols and out of integrity of how I cover the sport.
Yeah.
I'm just going to choose not to address that.
Okay, there you go.
Something I think that could be interesting. Also, just to point on Ole Miss and Michigan State. Look no further than what Chris Beard did to a Michigan team in 2019, where you think you're rolling, you can't be touched, and all of a sudden, they kind of stuff you in the locker and get you. His teams are always tough defensively.
And Michigan State.
Same year. In the Final Four.
That's right. So Michigan State fans are very aware of how dangerous a Chris Beard team would be. That's going to be fascinating to watch.
A lot of people are aware of how dangerous Chris Beard can be.
Jesus.
Okay.
I'm not touching that. Good Lord. Well, I'm happy that's the first. Again, we're going to be there no matter what. So you're not going to hear me complaining about a 9:39 tip off. Actually excited to watch that first game for a little bit, and then we get to settle in and do our job there. But something I think I'd like to do this week, the loss that really kind of started Auburn's slide at the end of the season was against Texas A&M, and just kind of glancing through the box score here. Janai Broom and Dylan Cardwell did not play well in that game. I think they had 8 points apiece. The bench did almost nothing. And Texas A&M didn't really shoot the ball well. It actually kind of looks like very similar to a lot of Michigan box scores we've seen. So excited to kind of dive into that and see maybe if there's anything to glean from that. I don't know. I don't know how rare it is that you're the last team that you played in the tournament has something on film for the next team you'll play in this event. So I'm sure Dusty May, Michigan, if they haven't already, that's something they'll be crunching sometime this week. But I'm not asking for a prediction, but what does your gut tell you about this weekend? Are we coming home Saturday? Are we just one day at a time and we'll see what happens come Sunday?
I don't know that I can pick Michigan to win. I just think they're going to give them one hell of a game. I think at the end of the day, I think this might be where it ends for Michigan. I think Auburn. It'll probably be Auburn and Michigan State. But I've been surprised already, guys, by so much that's gone on in the postseason here that nothing would shock me. It wouldn't shock Michigan State rematch wouldn't shock me. It would shock me if Michigan got blown out by Auburn. I think that would be the only thing that shocked me. The other game I think is going to come right down to the wire. It'll probably be dependent partially on how it's called, but I think Michigan's got a legit chance to win this game, maybe 3 or 4-10, right? And I think that's fair. Everybody's saying, well, you look at the difference in the spread and all that. I don't pay any attention to that. Michigan's been an underdog in how many games now? 5 of the last 6 or 4 of the last 5, and they've gotten the job done. So, especially with LJ Kaysen, the way he's playing now brings another element to this game. They needed him badly to step up. They needed somebody, and Roddy Gale. I don't know if Roddy Gale. He's not going to put up 26 probably against Auburn, but if he can just continue to provide a little bit of outside shooting, Reuben Jones, if he can help in that respect too, I think that Trey Donaldson's going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder. You got to keep it in control. You don't need to take over the game. But all in all, I think it's going to be a great game. I can't say one way or another on the prediction. I would probably predict Auburn to win a tight one. But to me, Michigan's going to be right there.
Yeah, and this team, to me, has played better as an underdog, kind of with a chip on their shoulder. I thought maybe throughout the season, especially when they were chasing the Big Ten regular season title, they played a little bit tight, especially in some of those home games that you really couldn't lose for resume and for the Big Ten title chase. But since then, like you said, Chris, underdog against Purdue, they win that one by 18. Underdog against Maryland by 4.5 points. They win that by 1 point. Underdog 4.5 points to Wisconsin. You win that one as well. That one by 6 points. UC San Diego, you're a 2-point favorite. Everyone's picking them. They're the trendy upset pick of the weekend, and you take care of business there. And then A&M, your 3.5 point dogs move to, I think, 2.5 by game time, and you win that one 91-79. So this team's got that edge to them that Dusty May said that he would hope they would coming out of the Big Ten tournament when they thought they were underseeded as a 5. And they have something to prove here this weekend. So my official score, haven't thought about yet. That'll come in our show on Thursday from Atlanta. But I would lean Auburn right now. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Michigan steps up again and wins. And Chris, you make a great point on what it would take here in what Michigan is at this point in the season. Maybe it's better than what we've seen. If LJ Kaysen continues to emerge, right, then you're different than what all your numbers say you are, because this freshman has come on and progressed to the extent that he has. Or Roddy Gale, a guy who really stopped becoming a factor in this rotation other than on the defensive end of the floor at times, from mid-January all the way till mid-March, and here he is now as somebody who was a catalyst in a couple wins over the weekend, the 2 biggest wins of the season, because it kept your year alive. So maybe they're an improving team with they don't seem deep right now with the 8-man rotation. That's pretty standard. But when you have a guy in Amari Burnett who kind of just didn't show up or play all that well over the weekend, but you had other guys that you trusted to put in there, then you look like a little bit of a deeper team than you were coming in, a little bit more talented because guys are emerging. So it might be coming together at the right time. No guarantee of that. It's going to take a lot to win, but they might be an ascending team here that is even better than we thought coming into this past weekend.
with Kaysen, you've got another guy that can go get his. Everybody's like, who's that guy that can go get his? If it's not Roddy and it's not Ruben Jones, who is it if Trey's not playing extremely well? And the second that he saw a mismatch in that UCSD game, boom, he was to the rim. He did the same thing against A&M. I sense it's going to be a little bit tougher against Auburn, but when you've got a guy like that can create, and he had some nice dishes too. He just missed a third one to Roddy Gale on a pass that got deflected, but then that changes your entire offense. You're going to get better looks outside. You're not going to be shooting contested threes. You can shoot some wide open threes, which we saw. So you're absolutely right. I think LJ Kaysen is one of those guys who has really changed the dynamics of this offense if he continues to play like that.
And he was doing that against defenses that, like, at all costs prevent you from getting to the rim.
Right.
And he just did anyway.
Yep.
He's just got that extra juice to him. So that was really impressive. And sitting behind the bench, one of the things, LJ checks in, they inbound it to him. He's dribbling up the floor, and Dusty just yells, "Be aggressive, LJ." And boom, he gets to the rim in like 2-3 dribbles. Yep. They have a ton of confidence in this kid. He almost scares you a little bit at times, and then he'll make a play. But he's just that kind of talented and raw, and he's developing in front of our eyes.
We talked about X factors heading into the first weekend of the tournament, and said how it's weird to call a starter an X factor. Trey Donaldson to me was that last weekend and answered the bell. And if I had to call my shot for who that guy is this weekend, I think it's Danny Wolf. I think what he does against my nephew against Auburn is probably the biggest key to the game. And then I think if you get a better version of Danny Wolf than you did in those first two games against Michigan State, if that's who it is, or if it's Ole Miss, whatever, I think he's a guy where if he's a constant this weekend, you might just not be talking about winning a weekend. You might be talking about having a chance to win a region, which is I can't fathom that right now. But crazier things have happened already this season. So excited to see about that. 9:39 p.m. on CBS Friday night. We got the A crew, Ian Eagle, Grant Hill, Bill Raftery, and the Michigan alum herself, Tracy Wolfson, on the call. So excited to get down there Thursday, see practice, check the vibes, and then it's all business on Friday and hopefully beyond.
Shout out to Dana. Shout out to Dana Jacobson too, who sat next to us, Michigan grad, and had some words with us. And she's a pro. It was fun watching her work. It's fun watching her in action. So Dana, thanks for watching.
Right on.
For sure.
All right, we're going to move into a little bit of football and then take some questions to end the show. But before we do that, I want to talk about been showing this bad boy off for a few weeks now. It's the 2025 official Michigan Jordan Fly Elite Football. For the first time ever, Jordan Brand's signature innovation, performance, and swagger are hitting the turf in the big house. This ball that you see here on the screen is the official game ball of the Wolverines, and you will see it in action all season long. It's got the signature Maze Jumpman and Block M logos, iconic symbols of innovation and performance on that front. Engineered to Michigan's quarterback specs, they helped design this. Input, whatever feedback they could give, went into this football. Pebbled lace, a visible colored maize lace reinforcement flap, an overlay stripe, handcrafted in the USA by our friends over at Big Game Football Factory. And every ball that you order comes with a certificate of authenticity. So it's not just a football. It is a piece of Michigan football history. It's perfect for the true Michigan fans to display, give it as a gift, throw it around the backyard. It's colder this week, but it's going to warm up. It's football weather. So get out there and toss it around. You could be among the first to own it. Snap yours up today at biggameusa.com/Wolverines. That's biggameusa.com/Wolverines.
And easily deflatable if you want to take a little air out of it, just for your information.
That is not in the ad read. The ad read is over. So
well, that's just from my experience, and it's a fantastic ball.
And it's something they should probably do to these NCAA tournament basketballs as well.
Yes, we were talking about that. We got to feel it a little bit. And the players were talking about those Wilson balls. They look like Clay and I were talking. It's like something you see at the end of an end cap at Walmart or something. And they're that orange.
Bins,
yeah, in those bins. They're that orange and they're a little bit slick. Normally I could palm a basketball. I can still palm this thing. But normally you're palming, all over the place. And this one's a little bit different. So, but it is what it is. They all got to play with the same one.
All right, that's been Ball Talk here
there
on the Wolverine podcast. We talked to Sharon Moore today. He held his first media availability of spring football, probably his last until after the spring game. That's usually how the calendar has worked the last couple of years, but we played all the hits today. Asked about the offensive line. The quarterbacks obviously came up. Rod Moore's health, some other contributors, and some of the young guys that are coming up through the ranks. Fellas, your takeaways from what we heard from Sharon Moore on Monday.
Yeah, not much to report again, right? Because they're just getting started. He said our first day in pads on Saturday, as we reported, they were in pads, but they weren't. They were just doing thud. They weren't doing tackling, and the pads weren't popping. Some of the guys who played in the '80s who were there said, it was weird not hearing the pads popping because Bo Schembechler would have them butting heads and everything else at this point. But you got to be a little bit more careful, obviously, in this day and age. So Evan Link starting out at left tackle, as we reported. That one, we'll see how he does there, but he said he'll play it left, he'll play it right. I thought that his comments on the receivers, the lengthy, long receivers, he seems pretty encouraged by that. The replacements on the defensive line, with Rayshon Benny stepping up, he said he had a great winter. And I asked him, I said, there's no Mason Graham on this defense. You're talking about the best defensive tackle that ever played at Michigan. But if Rayshon Benny can play at an extremely high level, and those two transfers, Damon Payne and Trey Williams, can come in there and play well, then I think they're going to have a really good shot to have a great run defense again, especially with those linebackers. So he seemed comfortable to me, guys. He seemed much more relaxed, like, okay, this is my team now. I know what to expect in my second year. Loved everything he said about Chip Lindsey and how they were simpatico and on the same page when it came to the offense and how much knowledge he had. That really stood out to me. It seems like Chip knows what he wants to do, but at the same time is adding a lot of what he has done so well in the past. I expect much better from this offense in 2025 than we saw in 2024, as long as the offensive line is good.
Yeah, some other things I was encouraged by what he said about TJ Guy, the way he's transformed his body, become more of a leader, switched his number to number 4. Sharon said he earned that, a number that he kind of wanted, but maybe he wasn't going to switch. And Sharon said, no, if you want to do it, do it. You've earned that right. And coming back as a fifth-year senior, that could be big. You got Derek Moore there. He mentioned Cameron Brandt, Dominic Nichols, junior and sophomore, respectively, stepping up there. So it would be important to have good edge play there in combination with the defensive tackles that you talked about. Have a good run defense, have a good pass rush. Running backs, Jordan Marshall picked up where he left off in the spring. Justice Haynes has already come in, the Alabama transfer, and become a leader right away, kind of setting the tone with just the way he carries himself. I mean, you see all the videos, training, and everything that he does. But sounds like that's also carried on to his role in the program. No rush to start, name a starting quarterback. That's no surprise. I don't think many coaches around the country are probably going to name starting quarterbacks this spring, given all the calendar issues in college football and what's coming. And then another takeaway was Dominic Zavada has an awesome Kevin Durant jersey, apparently, and drilled a 60-yard field goal the other day in practice and walked off like nothing happened. So it doesn't seem like he's missed a beat either. What a stud Dominic Zavada is.
Yeah, again, not quarterback battle comes up. Again, right now, this time of year, it's all playing the hits. They haven't even really, like you said, Chris, they did thud with pads on the other day, but good to set a baseline. I want to bring up what you said about the Mason Graham. There's not a Mason Graham on the roster. It kind of reminds me of, after the 2021 season, Michigan loses Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo, and one of the big storylines is, where's the pass rush going to come from? Who's going to be the guy? And it was different. They were deeper. They rotated a little more. You had guys like Mike Morris step up into roles. So I can foresee something similar happening there. Obviously, at defensive tackle, they're going to be deeper. They're going to rotate a little more. I'm not super concerned about really anything at the moment. We'll see on the offensive line, but until we see, and even if we hear great things, how often did we hear how great the quarterbacks were in the lead up to last season and how great the offensive line looked? And so you take it all with a grain of salt, but if nothing else, I think, the big takeaway is that Sherrone Moore survived. I think they all kind of survived and then thrived at the end of that first year. And now, he feels like a guy that's in command as one of the, as the leader at the top of the food chain here with Michigan football.
Yeah, and I'm a little concerned about the wide receivers and the offensive line and the offense until they prove me wrong, right? Until they show me. I think the running backs will be really good. but it couldn't be any worse than last year. Let's be honest here. They were just they were anemic. They were, I think, last in passing yardage or passing total passing yardage, if I'm not mistaken, just above the service academies and right there with Iowa. It's funny because everybody at the beginning of the year was like, "We're going to be Iowa on offense," and we're like, you're not, Michigan's never going to be that bad," but they were, and so they've got different personnel. And it was other thing that Lindsey said early a couple weeks ago, where he said there were a lot of plays to be made, fellas. That guys, that there were good play calls by Kirk Campbell, and guys just couldn't execute them or didn't execute them. Whether it was a missed block, whether it was a bad pass, whether it was a drop pass, whatever, a back making the wrong cut that they need to fix. So it'll be fascinating to see how it looks. I can't wait to see Bryce Underwood in action, and I'm very interested to see how the offensive line shakes out and what they do in the portal if they can add somebody. Because to me, again, and I get, again, I still get emails about this from people mad at me about, what I say about Evan Link. From what we say about guys like Evan Link comes from people who have played the game and who have watched him all year. And, hey, it makes me really nervous at right tackle. How's he going to be at left tackle? It's fair. I'm sorry. It's just a fair concern. So that to me is what I'll be watching. And hopefully Juan Castillo will give Grant Newsome some help there on the offensive line, coaching these guys, and those guys gel, because that's, to me, is where it starts for this team.
Yeah, you don't have to have played college football to know when a guy's struggling, to see it
Right. That too.
yourself. And I think, probably the offense, he can't get much worse. I think the offensive line could be worse than it was. We'll see what they do in the spring transfer portal. But, I mean, you lost your best offensive lineman off of last year's line that wasn't very good. And now you have less depth than you had because some of those second-string players transferred away, like Dom Jadis going to Missouri, Raheem Anderson going to Western Michigan, some of the more experienced players that at least maybe you would trust to know what they're doing in there. And Jadis obviously started games at the beginning of last season. So, huge concern on the offensive line. They're rotating guys through different positions, Evan Links, both sides, all these different guys cycling through. That's what the spring's about. It's pretty much just getting better at football. And then you forge the team in fall camp. So, I wish Sharon Moore gave us more, but I also understand that he doesn't have all the answers because they're in really early phase of an early phase as is. Like spring ball is that early phase. And there are only 3 practices in, one of them in pads. So there's still a long way to go here. Probably get more from some of the assistant coaches as the spring goes on as to who's exactly stepping up and how things are taking shape.
Yeah, and when I say I'm not worried or concerned, I mean relative to what we are hearing, when these guys talk in spring ball. I think the built-in concerns are, the offensive line, wide receivers, all that. And I think we'll know how they feel about that based on what they do in the spring portal coming up. So a lot to still sort out there. But again, good to be back in the room with the head coach and a guy who just feels like he has a lot of confidence right now, a lot of conviction in the path forward, and, excited to see what sort of I won't call it a ground up rebuild on offense, but when you have an entire new room of quarterbacks and a new play caller, kind of feels that way, especially when we know that Chip has some things in the past that he's liked to do. So excited to see how that comes along. Any other thoughts from Sharon before we really only have 2 questions to take today?
Let's get the questions. I love the way that Sharon looked relaxed and happy. I think this is going to be a good year, especially defensively. So everything that he's learned in year 1, we saw a lot of improvement at the end of last year, and that was what I really wanted to see. For them to finish the season the way they did, such a boost, fellas. And the good teams and the well-coached teams are improving at the end of the year. We can say it that it didn't look like a well-coached team earlier in the year, and there were times that it didn't. We can flat out turn around and say that at the end of the year, it looked like an extremely well-coached team. And the offense was still struggling, but the lack of penalties and the discipline, everything else, fellas, was I was really excited about that. So excited for Sharon Moore year 2, but man, more excited right now for the Sweet 16 and the Final Four.
Mm-hmm. And he said that he looks like he knows what he wants and how he wants it to be. I don't know that he knew those things going into spring ball last year. Like he said, he was less than 2 months in on the job when they started spring practice last year. You kind of get the staff together. I know a lot of it is back this season, but they didn't have the support staff that they have now. Recruiting staff was still coming together. Like just all these different pieces are now in place, and at least sets you up for the chance to be successful this coming season. There are no guarantees, but a coach having a vision and having the time to actually execute it is really important. I don't know that he had that last season. And now it seems like he at least has that foundation set.
It does feel that way. 2 questions this week, and one is kind of the offshoot of the other one. So I'll ask the first question first. This is from our message board, The Fort, which again, use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our website for $1. That'll get you on there. This is from CT Blue 72, who says, who wins a national championship first, Dusty May or Sharon Moore?
Oh, it's a tough one. I'm going to go with Dusty May. I think Dusty's going to win a natty here. Neither one of them may win it. It's hard to win a national championship, but if I were going to say one was going to do it, I would go with Dusty. And boy, you got the Bryce Underwood era too, fellas. And in a couple of years, I think that Michigan football team is going to be really good. So I could see it going either way, but I'm going to go with Dusty.
Yeah, the line of questioning is interesting because it's assuming that one of them does, which is
right.
A tough assumption to make. It's really hard to win one. Even Jim Harbaugh, I think the best coach in football, needed a lot of time to do it and had a bunch of disadvantages with this sport that we know. And then there's a changing landscape. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I would say Dusty May has a better chance. I think both have a similar chance. I don't think it's like way higher than Sharon Moore, but I'd say probably neither does it.
I'd lean, to me, it's a wash, but I think it might be, it's hard to say because you say easier in football, but Ohio State lost 2 football games this year that would have been incredibly damaging in any other football season, but now it's not. And they had the most talent on their roster and they won it all. They spent the most money. And I don't know if Michigan can get to that, they could go 10-2 in a year and win 4 straight games. I don't think that the Ohio State Buckeyes they're trailblazers in that they literally won the first 12-team playoff. That's it. So, man, it's tough. I lean football, but I believe in Dusty May, and he's going to be on the doorstep for a while. So he's already made a second weekend at 2 different schools, which is not a fluke. So maybe I just talked myself into Dusty May. I don't know. Our last question here, an offshoot of that from Sasquatch 616. He says, who wins another natty first, Tom Izzo or John Wooden?
Oh, wow. I'll say this, man. This is a shot here for Tom Izzo this year with this team. They play well together. I don't think they're as skilled as some of the teams that they're going to be facing. But a lot of the time it's about the draw. I mean, they could be in another bracket. They could be out already the way they played. They didn't play. They played good for 2 halves, frankly, of 4 against lesser competition. If they play a half like they did in one of those games, if they don't play 2 halves against their next couple opponents, I think they're going home. So I will go with the ghost of John Wooden. I don't think that Tom Izzo will win another one. Maybe he does if he sticks around till he's 80, at which point maybe he's overstayed his welcome. I mean, there were already a lot of Michigan State fans saying they needed to make a change before this year after he'd gone, 1 of 7 and getting to the second weekend in the last 7 tournaments. Now it's 2 of 8, is it? 2 of the last 8, I think they've made it and gotten to the second weekend. So, but I think there's a shot, and I do give him credit for what he's accomplished with this team, even if they are mouthy and have no class when it comes to Michigan.
I'm going to go with Izzo over a guy who's dead. But
we're breaking it down.
Over a dead guy?
Yeah, but also, Izzo has to win it this year. The pressure's on. They will win. Michigan State will win the national championship this season. It would be utter failure if they don't.
Wow. Put that on them. I'll say this about Michigan State. If they find a way to win a national title this year, they will have, in all likelihood, gone through 3 of these teams: Auburn, Florida, Houston, Duke. If you're able to pull that off, more power to you. But yeah, I'll go with the guy who is still with us. But we'll see what happens. Tough weekend for the Spartans coming up. Tough weekend for the Wolverines. We'll be down there to see. We'll hopefully down there to see this through to its completion. I would love to come home Monday morning and rack our brains about how the hell all 3 of us are going to get down to San Diego or San Antonio. Would be a hell of a hell of a thing, but
Airplane.
one day at a time.
Preferably through the air. Preferably on an airplane would be nice.
I don't know. I might take a horse and buggy down there. It saves a couple pennies for the company, but I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it as always. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more from the Wolverine, whether it's football, basketball, recruiting, etc. Use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our site for a single $1. It's what Clayton Safey calls the best deal in America. Still is, my friends. For Clayton Safey, Chris Ballas, our producer Megan behind the scenes, I'm Anthony Broom. We will talk to you guys again later this week.